Welcome everyone here on the virtual DDD meetup. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, and so on and so forth. So wherever you are, I'm very glad that you are here. My name is Jofi, and I have Kenny Bass with us here today, who is the co-organizer. And also we have Staffan here with us, who will talk about how they use AI to accelerate design in their DDD and domain modeling tool. So very excited to hear that. Thank you for joining us and being here. And again, but I guess you already see that this is streamed on YouTube and it will be recorded as well. So you can switch off and on camera accordingly. I'm just saying to the Zoom attendees. And also, please go ahead and ask questions however you like throughout the meetup, Zoom chat or YouTube chat, or just if you are in the Zoom call, sorry, then you can ask in the meantime. So after Staffan showcased his about their tool and about the modeling and about the AI stuff, we can continue discussion, free discussion, and also with the Q&A, we can address some questions coming up in the meantime and also afterwards. So handing over to Staffan to kick off.
All right, thank you very much. So yeah, good evening, everybody, and nice to see so many here today. And my name is Staffan, and I have been in software development for more than 20 years. And mostly I've been on the business side of things, except for a few years, maybe very early in my career, where I was a developer. And the last few years when I actually went back to development again. And yeah, I'm a co-founder of Clarify, where we are building a product that can do event storming, data modeling, and also code generation. And today I will talk about how we can use AI to speed up domain modeling and how we can also generate code from that domain model. And we will see how we can create domain models in minutes rather than maybe days or weeks. I mean, it can take a long time. And I think also it's often much easier to react to something like a domain model instead of just creating it from a blank sheet of paper. And AI might not be able to generate exactly the domain model that you want, but I still think you can learn a lot from AI and speed up the process. So before we begin to the details, I was asked to talk a little bit about my background, how it started before Clarify. And so for me, my journey started quite a bit north from Stockholm, where I am right now. And it's in the mountains in North Sweden, close to the Norwegian border. And initially, the plan was to continue working with my family's reindeers to take over. But after I managed to save enough money to buy my first computer, the plans started to change. And first I started, as many others, play games, but soon I got interested in development. So fast forward a couple of years, it's 2008, and I moved to Stockholm and founded a company called Vimo together with two friends. And here we are at our first office. And we quickly grew to become we were delivering e-commerce solutions and quickly grew to become one of the largest e-commerce suppliers in Sweden, and also expanded internationally to around 10 countries. We got 6 times awarded as one of the fastest growing companies in Sweden. And also today, Vimo is doing good, more than 500 employees. But 4 years ago, I decided to take on a new challenge. I started Clarify together with Nikolaus. And we both had the same experience, that IT projects generally go wrong already early during the requirements gathering phase. And this is the problem we wanted to attack. So we started to develop a tool that initially was a very quick tool for building business processes. But later it turned out that we built more like full domain models. And around 1 year ago, we were selected with 10 other startups to Techstars, which is one of the most famous accelerator programs. And here we are in the Techstars office. It's pretty much exactly 1 year ago. And this is the moment when everybody started to talk about ChatGPT. And what are the possibilities? How can we integrate with this? So we decided to give it a try to integrate our product with ChatGPT. And after just a few hours, see if I can show you here. After just a few hours of work, actually our tool came to life. It just started to draw business processes by itself. It was like magic. And what made it so extremely quick to integrate was that for the first time now, the computer understood my language. I could express myself the way I wanted. So instead of always me having to learn the computer's language, so I could say, give me the data in this way, I want this format. And if I didn't get the right thing, I could tell it like, come on, be serious, or use some harder, stronger words, and actually it just worked. So this is how we ended up doing domain modeling with the help of AI. That wasn't really the plan from the beginning. But it turned out to be a very great help. So today I will demo how Clarify works. I will show how to generate domain events and put them on a timeline. I will continue with read and write models and system and aggregates and commands, and also demonstrate example of how you can turn a domain model straight into a working API, like working code. So maybe we can say a few things about APIs also. That it's not a new trend that organizations are looking to break up monoliths in order to reach different benefits. For example, smaller units. So you might not want to have so much dependency on just one application. So by splitting up the big application into smaller units, we can have, for example, we can have separate teams looking after each unit, which can create, it's easier to create accountability, maybe better maintenance, maybe better support. Maybe we can have faster innovations. Imagine you can try new ideas when you have access to all the organization's data and all the functions. If you have that access to that through a well-designed API, it will make it much easier to try out new ideas. And also, I think it's quite mind-blowing to think about all the possibilities that open up when using things like ChatGPT and function calling, if you have access to all this. All right, so I will start to show a little bit of the product. Let's see here if I can switch. Okay, can you see the
Yes.
Verify? Yes, okay, very good. So the tool we're building is, some parts is still work in progress. And by the way, we would love to have feedback from you, what things you like and what things you might not like. We're a small team and we are constantly developing the product. And the tool itself is quite simple. So basically, you put domain events on a timeline. So we have swim lanes for roles, and you can very easily add and rearrange domain events. So we have decisions for policies, and if you want to rearrange, you can just do like this. We can connect and do stuff like this, merge flows together. You can drag stuff drag things back and forth like this. So it's a simple and fast tool for working with domain events. And we also have cards. So each domain event can be enriched with cards that you define yourself. So for example, if I want to add a problem here or hotspot, I can do that. And over here, I can set up all the card types that I want. So for example, here we have command, user story, system problem, and opportunity. Maybe user story is not typically used in this way, but we find it quite useful to have that.
I can just plus one that it's very useful in some use cases.
Right. Yeah. So let's start a new workflow and get a little help. Do something more interesting with the help of the Copilot. So I prepared a prompt. Let's see if I can do this. So here I prepared a prompt that goes like this. Create a workflow containing the CRM process that is used in the standard setup of Salesforce, involving the roles salesperson, sales manager, and customer. The first step in the workflow should be new lead created by role salesperson. So I mean, you can make shorter or longer prompts. I just took something here that felt kind of quite generic. It's also interesting, you can refer to existing systems. So I choose now to use past tense for verbs. And here maybe we can skip problems and opportunities this time. We can add some data models. And yeah, so now we are sending this query off to ChatGPT and asking it to suggest a workflow for us with the help. And as you can see here, we're also getting cards generated and also data models. But just to save some time, I already prepared. I ran this prompt. It takes maybe 1 minute to finish this. So I already prepared one prompt, one workflow here. So now when we have the whole workflow, you can start to look for things that you would try to recognize things that you're interested in. So maybe start looking for entities that could become aggregate routes, for example. And here we can see that we have salesperson, a new lead created. Maybe this lead sounds like an entity, and also here lead, possibly an aggregate, opportunity. Maybe that's another entity or proposal. So in each, So once you have done that, also in each step of the process, we also now have asked for system and command. So basically, which system is this command create new lead being performed on? And in this case, we have the Salesforce CRM, which is what we asked for. And this means that once you have done this, we can also look at the same workflow here, but from another perspective. So we can look at the system perspective here. So here we have then the roles on the left side, and you have the commands in blue, and those commands are being performed on this system in yellow, and then we have the corresponding events on the right side. So you can see that those commands are connected horizontally to a resulting event. So before we continue with working with this part, I'm going to just quickly show you the data models also, how we do the data modeling. And that's over here under data models. So I click on this first one, a new lead created, and take a look at the data model. And the way we capture data model is with something called an event story. It's created usually by asking the domain experts for example data, or in this case, we ask the AI. So we found that it's much easier to ask for example data rather than just ask what fields do you want. So you should also be able to read this event story, like new lead created by salesperson John Doe for contact person Alice on creation date 1st of January from lead source and so on. And we also have tags here that is defining whether this is part of the read model or the write model. So for example, salesperson is part of the read model. That might be something that we cannot change, that is provided to us when we are performing this particular step. But the ones with the write model are things that we now will provide when we perform this command. And this works like, like a spreadsheet. You can add fields. Let's say you want to add something here, company size. And you give an example. So usually you ask the domain experts for an example, what is a normal company size? And they will say maybe, how do you classify company size? And they might say 500 to 1,000 or whatever they do. So by capturing example data, we also get insight into the business. We also have these small helpers over here. So it's the 7W questions. So how many? It's probably the right thing here. And the idea with these ones are that it can help you to capture all kinds of data that is relevant in this step. So for example, who, you can ask here, have we captured all the roles? We have a salesperson, we have a contact person. Do we have any other individual that is relevant in this step? When, for example, do we have any dates that are important in this step of the process, and so on? That can be a good help. So once we have done this, we can go on and look at related entities. So, and once again, I will take the help of AI. So if you look at this table, you might see we have things like salesperson, and probably this is connected to some other existing database or table, maybe located in another place. So this would be then related entities. Maybe contact person would be also that. So we can add this manually, or we can use the Copilot to see if it agrees with us on this. So let's see. Sometimes it's a little bit slow. Okay. So it comes back and it suggests that salesperson is a related entity, and also lead is a related entity. I would probably think that it should not be a lead. Maybe it should be contact person rather. If we think that what we are doing now is the lead, so then I would probably say that the related entity would be contact person. So I mean, it's not perfect, but for sure it helps. So once we are done with this part, we can now go back to this system view, and let's try now to break out the microservice from this monolith. Let's say that we think that lead is an aggregate, and we want to factor this out, and we want to maybe we have some special needs that we don't think doesn't work so well with Salesforce. So now we will create our own service in-house. So the way we do this is we look again then at all those domain events that are operating on the aggregate lead. And with the system, I replace Salesforce CRM with lead. And immediately down here, you can see that it pops out of the monolith and is placed on its own lane. And we can say also that lead qualified here should probably also operate on this aggregate. So now we have factored out 2 commands. And we can, the next thing we can do is also then to say that, okay, we want this to be in its own bounded context. So I'll create a bounded context. Let's call this bounded context like maybe lead management. And so now we have a lead bounded context here. And we can now turn on the data fields. So now what we can see is that we have a bounded context, we have the aggregate, and down here you can see a little label which says integration with other contexts. So it has now identified that we have these 2 related entities that are probably in another bounded context. So that means that this should be integration between bounded contexts. So you can almost see this as a very simple context map. We don't have like a full context map yet, but this is it shows from the perspective of one bounded context. It shows the integration points. So now when we have done this, we have factored out our little microservice. We have some integrations. So basically what we have here is a definition of an API. We can use this to implement an API. We have the arguments of each function. And sometimes you might have some more finer details, how you would want this aggregate to work internally, or this microservice. Then we can use user stories, for example, to add more details. Like as a salesperson, I want to categorize new leads based on potential business value. So here we can capture things that are more difficult to capture in the other parts of the model. So from this step, we can now move on to the final step.
Excuse me, just to clarify, when that was giving the pause indicator, was that actually reaching out to the AI and generating those additional user stories?
Yes, yes, that's what it is. So we are passing back a summary of what we have, so we can see what we have and generate new user story suggestions based on that.
Does this mean that this really works for cases where the problem is one that the LLM already understands very well? Like, I don't know what is the LLM underlying this, but I suppose it's seen many examples of a sales process.
Yes. So this is GPT-4. So here we can choose. Actually, I'm using Clarify here, our own trained model that is it's still very basically trained. But we had ChatGPT-4 and 3.5. And yeah, we could add more models. But it's a good point but it seems like ChatGPT knows a lot of basic processes. I mean, if you think about many of the big ERP systems and such, it's kind of, the information is probably out there, how they work. So it knows surprisingly a lot. Yeah, so from here, basically we can just go on to generate the code for this API. And although this, I would like to develop this a bit more. This is still a little bit work in progress. But here we can specify that, for example, we want, which kind of API do I want? So, for example, Node.js with Express, SQL-based, just as a testing framework. And based on these selections, I will get a template here that I can refine further. This now is in YAML format. Doesn't have to be. This is just a way to give it some syntax coloring in a structured format. But when we're happy with this, we can just press Generate API from prompt. Now it will first go out to ask for a file structure. What kind of file structure would you recommend for this API? Next thing, I haven't done this. This is going to be quite simple implementation. I want to see if it can do stuff like, clean architecture, where you put the domain at the center. This is not going to be like that. Maybe a few more days we can get that working as well. But here you can see it starts. It's suggesting a folder structure with routes, models, middleware, tests. We have Swagger documentation, we have a package JSON, and so on. And now I can download this. And I already prepared, I did this before, so I'm going to show you what it looks like when you download it. So let's see if I can quickly switch screen again. Let's see here, okay. So here, can you see my code? Yeah. So here you can see an example of what I get. And it actually works. I mean, almost. There was like tiny things I had to fix. For example, it didn't call visualise sync. Of course, this is a very, very simple, like a sandbox application. But we can run it. And yeah, it works. And we can do some simple curl to try to create new lead. And it responds with success. And we can have a look here at, let's see, database up here. Of course, now this is super simple. I just repeated the same contact person. So I'm not saying that this is going to be production ready or anything like that, but it works. And we can look at the Swagger. We can open the Swagger file, and it has the commands. And yeah, and it will be very interesting to see how far we can take this. I mean, if we can, for example, wouldn't be so hard to push this directly to GitHub and deploy it. Maybe have some run the automated tests on this. I don't think it's going to be that far away so it's pretty interesting. And I can go back here. Yeah, so that was basically the demo. And so to just summarize what we have done, we have gone from something that is, I would say, is very business friendly, that can easily be understood by a domain expert. I mean, this should probably be quite easy to understand for almost any like frontline worker, even if the person only has a short experience. And then we have identified the systems or aggregates and commands on each step. By the way, I forgot to show you that you can also include those user stories into the code generation to get it to generate the business logic from those user stories. And then we move from this business-friendly view directly to a view that is architect-friendly in many ways. You can show the data fields and show the entities. And from there, generate the full API. Probably it would also be interesting to look at things like, you know, a two-way binding. Let's say you take this to GitHub and then you add things to the code. Can you go back and update the model backwards? And probably you could do that with a little bit help of AI. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to show. So maybe it went a little bit faster than expected, but yeah, it would be nice to. I can also mention that we would love to have feedback from skilled architects that understand DDD, like what are good, what is something that can be improved, or if we are under this is not. You don't think this is good at all. That's also interesting to hear.
Also, we have a couple of questions in the chat.
Yeah.
There were the first question from Michael, like, are you making an explicit distinction between domain events and integration events?
Sorry, domain events and
integration event. But it was pretty much
no,
at the beginning, so.
Yes. No, so I wouldn't really say that we are doing that. So integration event would also be a domain event. Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay. There is a comment from Danny. Would be nice to have some prose text for possible entities to help generate the ubiquitous language.
Right. Right. Good company.
Yeah. Also,
what's interesting is that I can say that because we are generating this from, I would say, starting from the business language, that kind of automatically trickles down into the whole solution.
So I wonder, you say we start from the business language. It's the business language in ChatGPT, right? It's not the actual business language being used inside the company you're using it.
Right. Yes, exactly. But what we would do if we don't, now I'm showing you this with AI. Sometimes you would just use AI as maybe as a consultant to learn the domain. And once you go in there and do the real workshop, then you can start from a blank sheet. So you can create a new workflow, whatever it is you want to do, purchase orders. And you go in here and here you start. Oops, sorry. Here you start modeling with the business, and then you will just automatically get the language here from the domain experts. So I think this is also a tool that is very handy if you are an architect and you are a facilitator. I think that being an architect is sometimes also about being able to facilitate, because no one else is going to do it. And this is a tool that helps me as an architect to go in and facilitate together with business people, and I then automatically capture the language.
Yeah, it's also important to highlight, I guess, that this demo is specifically for AI and how you implemented ChatGPT and stuff like that. But actually, it has the original use case, I can say, where you are modeling definitely in front of the event storming and, you discussing and crunching together with your teams? Or not? I mean, correct me, Staffan, if I'm wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
just...
And it's very good for event storming, and sometimes one of the first projects meetings I facilitated was at truck manufacturer Scania, one of the biggest in Sweden, and they've been struggling with. They were slow to adjust the amount of purchases to the factories based on when the demand went up and down. And after just a 1 hour event storming workshop, we figured out that it was just like a communication problem. It was never, we didn't even need to do anything. They didn't need to change any systems. It was just people that has misunderstood how the work process. So they were actually waiting for 2 weeks for something that they shouldn't be waiting for. And they figured this out because we were like 8 managers on the same call, modeling in real time, just putting out the domain events. And then they got surprised when they saw like, wow, are you guys at that department, are you working like that? We had no clue, and that is the problem. So it works very, very well on those early stages. And sometimes you even have to shut down a project because you realize you don't need it.
Yeah, there was another question from Christian. Is this explicitly for data analytics? You use words like star schema and dimensions.
Yes. So that's and maybe you might complain that our terminology is a bit all over the place, and that's probably correct, and we should probably shape it up because we have borrowed this whole method from data warehouse design, and this is a star schema. But it turned out that this way of modeling works very well for modeling relationships between entities also. Maybe there are things here that we don't really can do, but so far it works very well.
Yeah. Also a great idea from John. Oh, also I wanted to mention, like, please feel free to jump in and say yourself. I mean, I'm just reading it out loud from the chat. So it would be nice to generate models based on interviews with domain experts, maybe feed a transcript from an interview.
Yes, absolutely. That is brilliant. It works too. You can take, I've been recording meetings and just taking the transcript, push it to ChatGPT and get out the workflows.
Cool.
Yeah.
There is something from Rico. Wouldn't it be better to have a strategic design from the domain events first? Having bounded contexts with policies, behaviors would be more helpful to me when going too fast into the static data structures.
Sorry, can you read it one more time?
Yeah, the question part is, wouldn't it be better to have a strategic design from the domain events first? Having
Right.
bounded contexts with policies, behaviors would be more helpful to me than going too fast into the static data structures.
Right. Yes, and you can do that. I mean, you actually don't need to. See here we are showing the data model, but basically here you can do that without doing data models at all. Maybe you want even a higher level view where you can see like a real context map, but that can be probably generated from this. But yeah, I mean, yes, I would say.
Eric, was the question here asked in the chat the same you asked in during Staffan's demo, or?
Sorry, what do you mean?
I mean, you had a question in the chat and whether it's the same that you discussed during the demo.
No, I was asking, I think in the chat about whether this could round trip or is this a one-shot thing? You generate this thing from scratch and then from there you make your tweaks and you can add a few stories but you can't say, I don't know, take this existing thing and then make some refinement to it? Can you or can you not? I wasn't clear on just how much iteration I could include
Right,
the
right.
LLM.
Right, you mean you're talking about iteration with the large language model, the LLM.
Right. It seems like the large language model's contribution comes at the very beginning
Yes,
to create the very first draft.
yes. Yeah,
And
it's a good
maybe-
yes, it's a very good observation, and that's how it is now. We're planning to change that because this whole model, I mean, you can export it as a JSON. Everything is here, so it contains all the domain events, the cards, data models, bounded context, and so on. So it shouldn't be too hard to just add like the chat window here on the side, for example, and then we can do stuff like ask it to refine the whole thing. Go in and say stuff like yeah.
I can see how you could pass that in, but my experience with LLMs, by the way, this is quite interesting. But my experience with LLMs, if you pass that thing in and say, oh, I don't know, can you expand on contract sent? It's not going to just do that. It's going to recreate the whole thing and it won't be the same anywhere, like except by coincidence.
Right. Yes. Although, I mean, there are ways to mitigate for that. I mean, you could, capture the delta somehow and apply it in a controlled way, because we also have history here. So you can go back and forth. Every change generates a new version, and you can probably, if it goes too crazy, changes everything, you can just step back. But yeah, I'm not saying that it's going to be super easy, no, but it could be possible.
Oh, Danny, you have a question?
Yeah.
Am I saying your name correctly?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, cool.
Staffan, I was wondering if you have used this GPT modeling on a core domain that is not so generic in its nature that ChatGPT knows anything about it. How generic does the domain have to be in order for this to work?
Well, I have some examples here. All of them work great. Like maybe this is generic recruitment process by Google, home delivery of food, KYC for a large bank, last mile delivery for the electronics retailer, order process by Amazon, manufacturing for outdoor clothing, incident management for ITIL. I mean, you can have like risk management frameworks for banks. It works quite well. But I mean, you can also see that when you run it in multiple times, you get very different answers. So it's not so consistent. I mean, we know that, probably all of us. It's a bit all over the place. But I think, Eric, I think I heard your interview a few months ago, where you said that AI helps us to learn faster. It speeds up things, and I really think that's what it does here as well. It's not there yet that we can get a perfect answer. So maybe we can get taken 60-70% of the way. But also, I think that is probably what we want. We probably don't want it to go 100% of the way. We don't want to give up all control. We still want input in some way, and this is like one way where you can give input to it. Danny, do you want to try some? Do you have some suggestion on the prompt that is really difficult?
Oh no. I was just it was just pure mind gymnastics that I would assume that if ChatGPT knows enough about it, then it's generic, and then someone else might have already solved this, or it's something that you outsource elsewhere. But if you can get into a more core domain and apply this, then I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, you can also save time by getting the most trivial things generated for you, and then you will focus on the more difficult things.
Yeah, I guess you always can add your own bits, right, to the generated model. So like it gives you a good basis when you generate that, but also you can continue the discussion with your teams and add your own bits and tricks and core domains and differentiator into the model. So there are two hands. First is, sorry, I don't know your name from starting with G.
It's Grzegorz. Yes, it's Grzegorz. Hello.
Okay. Sorry.
So the thing that I sort of miss in this presentation is the understanding of the full development cycle. I mean, from like getting from the first idea, doing the event modeling, then modeling the schema, modeling events, and then I saw that you have went all the way to do the code generation. But then I was wondering, I mean, what would be the next step? Let's say that if you want to do any changes, or you would get a feedback, then would you do the change on this event modeling version, and then you will do the full-blown code generation again, or would you rather do the changes in the code base that you have generated, and would you treat this only as a starting point?
Right. Yeah. So at the moment, what you would do is you would update the model, and then you would generate a new code base, and then you would apply that probably as in your repository. So you will see which changes that were done. But in the future, it would be nice to be able to have a two-way binding where you'd update the model from the code as well. But we don't have that at the moment. So, but that's clearly a good question, and that's the next thing. And when you generate, if you update the model and you generate new code, as Eric mentioned, you might get a whole new code base. So that is a challenge. But I think that so it's a lot of work left to do here, of course.
All right. Christian?
Sure, just 2 comments. It looks like it's process-oriented. I could also see all your domains were like process for this and process for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, some domains maybe don't have so much process, but more like rules.
Yes.
Also, it could be nice if you could suggest some UI things, because often that's something that takes time. How would you, besides maybe some simple input form, if it could suggest more tricky UI things, maybe visualizing geographical things on a map or whatnot. But I mean, of course, that's just wishes from my side. There's a lot of interesting things that it can do. So just a comment from here.
Yeah, it's a good comment, I would say, and it's interesting that we actually did. This is not. We did an experiment where we actually generated a front end to the backend. So we have. This is also a CRM example where we. You see, you have a process here, and then you go to the app. So it generates a front end app also. And we have a Kanban board. You have all the steps in the process. You can add, you can create new records, and it works. So mean, you can think about these ideas. I mean, this is a very big project. What we did now is this is like a sandbox. It can be used to prototyping, but it's not even close to being production ready. So that's why I think it's more realistic to get to generate APIs at this stage.
Cool. Rico's question next.
Yes, I would like to know how do you avoid that the data model is mixed with the domain model when you generate the code? Because I was wondering, because the step from the events to the data model seems to me a little bit too fast and too early. So when you have complex systems with a lot of data flows, how is it about messaging and all the stuff and the behavior inside the domain model? So I was wondering, how can you generate this, or is it more like in a create, read, update, delete style something? What you do?
Yeah. I think this is it's a great question. I don't have a great answer to this. So that could be something. Of course, we can capture things with the user stories to make this API more richer in its functionality. So here you can have all kinds of conditions and constraints on the functions with the user stories, and you can pass them into the code generation and get them generated. But really complex things we might not be able to capture in this model at the moment. But it would be very, very interesting to hear ideas if that's possible somehow to capture in this model. Because it goes two ways. We improve the model, and then we see which kind of code we can generate, and then we need to go back and add some things to the model, and it goes back and forth. But we still want to keep the model so simple so it can capture the business side, and that's how we started out. We want to make something that is business friendly. Like Alberto Branolini says, there are so much more things that make developers tools for developers, but not so many tools that make us understand the business faster. So we don't want to make it too overly complex if the price is that it becomes less business friendly. But yeah, we don't have all of those things that you mentioned.
Yeah. So, but if you have the data persistence mixed with the domain model, so yeah, it could be intent in the wrong direction for my taste. So this
Right.
is we usually have in projects, so that people mix the data structures with and that it ends in endemic domain models or something like this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but maybe you don't need to. I mean, it's a little bit also depending on how do you see this. Do you see this as a data model or just an entity definition? Maybe some of these wordings here is leading to the wrong path.
Yeah. So, but what would be good to see how data flows, so on.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. And maybe one thing I was thinking about here is that in this case, every domain, every step of the workflow corresponds to one command on an aggregate route. So
yes.
what if you want to do something more advanced, like a transaction that involves operations on multiple aggregate routes? How would you do that? So possibly you could split it up into multiple events, or you could look at this event story as more like, I don't know, transaction log or something. But this is something we haven't really looked into that much yet.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Eric?
I was just thinking, so a great deal of what we're looking at in talking about seems to be the tool, as in a tool for capturing some description of a model and architecture. And I was sort of thinking, if you took all the AI stuff out of it completely, how much different would it really be? You would have you just sort of taken this tool? I'm a little, I guess my question is, because I'm confused about like, was the tool a thing developed for that purpose, intended to be built up entirely by humans? And then you stuck a thing on that generated a few of the artifacts? Or is it meant to enable the collaboration with the LLM to this end? Or could you just clarify that aspect?
Yeah, it is the first one. It's a tool that was meant to work completely without any kind of AI. Everything was meant to. We didn't even know about AI at that point when we set out to do this. But AI kind of came to our rescue because it turned out that it was quite difficult to learn how to use this tool without AI. And now we can, generate so much. We can get people onboarded very quickly because they can generate something similar to their own domain and, get into it and start playing around with the tool.
I think that's a pretty fundamental point there that I missed.
Yeah.
Is especially that, well, first of all, that the tool predated the AI part, but also the point that starting from scratch is very hard. And I have experienced that. So that might even help with the issues that a few of us have raised about lack of round tripping, right? Maybe the round trip isn't as important as just getting out of the starting blocks.
Yes. And that is something we need to work on to really, refine the model constantly, because that's what you need, what you will do. And you need to be able to do that. Otherwise, there's going to be a gap, which you don't want, between the code and the model.
There were hands up, but I don't see that anymore. Oh, Marius.
Hi. So
Hey.
actually, I am listening to the comments, and I'm wondering, because in a classical software development, we have like business and software developers, and actually both sides have to understand each other. And I'm wondering if this adding LLM to this equation doesn't just add some complexity of the process. It's like, business tells some things to LLM, and then developers stop talking to business. They rather focus on what LLM generated and develop it further if we need some refinement of what LLMs created.
Yeah.
Is it a risk here?
You mean that actually people start talking to each other less because they trust
Yes.
the LLM?
Yeah. They trust the LLM first of all, and they stop talking to each other because it's easier for a business to give a prompt to LLM,
Yes.
and then they get some result of generation, and they have to cope with that artifact created by artificial intelligence, rather than understanding what are the actual requirements for the domain.
Yeah. I think that is absolutely a risk that can happen. So it can happen. I still think that I would prefer to have something to react to, something to even, and maybe it's in these situations, as an architect or as a meeting facilitator, it's better to go into the meeting with an empty sheet and start modeling from scratch, which this tool is made for. But maybe you will run a couple of models secretly or as your own preparation before you go in to the workshop. But there is a risk that AI actually makes us humans communicate less. So we should try to be aware of that.
Yeah, but we all know that actually all those generative AI models, well, they try to cheat us in some cases just to get some result that looks good.
Yes,
and
yes.
that's actually creates some communication bias, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, that's absolutely a risk that we have.
Michael?
Yeah, a quick question. A great demo. Thank you so much for this. So I think somebody put in the chat also, there was a question about event modeling. That's kind of my take. I do things using event modeling. So I'm doing CQRS. I do everything by example. So I like to come up with a UI element and create some flows with my bounded context. And then I'm just playing a game where I'm just moving data between my bounded context from my UI, just making sure that the data flows properly, and that one service can get data from another, and then it came from the UI, and then I'm doing a little bit of reasoning to see if the data really does flow. I'm not sure if you got that, but if so, does your tool provide help with me in this kind of iterative process of moving data? I mean, that means I'm focusing on events and shifting my events with my commands and with my UI. And so it's just data is just I'm iterating over that data, not to be redundant. But does your tool help me with that?
Possibly, it can do that. So, I mean, the way we do it now, maybe that should be. It's in each step here. It's kind of implicitly baked in both the read and the write. So that would be maybe a query followed by a command. So maybe if you want to separate those in the implementation, how you want to do that might be you can do that, of course. But how the data flows between so yeah, in this case we have okay, I'm going to switch back to the other one. Let's see it here. So here we create a new lead, and we have contact person, creation date. If you move to the next step, you have some other fields here, but it's still operating on the same aggregate. So it's actually some new information are added on the aggregate in this step, and some information like salesperson is following along. Yeah, I would like to discuss this. Maybe this is I don't have maybe a great answer to your question here and now. I maybe need to think a little bit about it, but it will be very interesting to see how you do that.
Awesome, thank you.
Also, I know that the demo is about AI and stuff like that, but I would really want to highlight here, like I used to experiment with the tool, and also what I found really, really useful is like I was using that for mapping out user story mapping, basically. And I'm not sure whether Staffan didn't mention that because on purpose, maybe it's not fully implemented, but the Jira export is just so useful because whenever you have the models, be it EventStorming, be it user story mapping, be it anything, like you are able to export it right away and basically build up a very basic backlog, and you can just work from there or go from there. I just wanted to mention. And Eric, you also have a question. Sorry, I didn't notice.
I think I raised my hand while you were talking, so you.
Oh, okay. Zoom sometimes bringing up for me. Okay, go ahead.
It was more of a comment than a question, but I was going to say, I think, well, kind of two things. One is a thing can be very useful and not solve every problem. So when I say that I think it might be most applicable to generic subdomains where the underlying model already knows a lot, which may or may not be a restriction it has. But if it does, that's not a bad thing if it's recognized as such, right? Like you've got this tool that's for representing all sorts of models, and then you say, in the case where it's a generic subdomain where there's a lot of underlying knowledge of the domain in an LLM, you can generate this first draft. And even the first draft generation isn't necessarily in other words, you don't have to have everything for a thing to be very useful. So even if the only thing you could do is generate first drafts when you are working in a general area of a generic subdomain, I mean, it's really helpful though to state like, where is this thing strong?
Yeah.
And my other comment, go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think you might have a point there, and maybe that remains to be seen a little bit. It would also be interesting to, take a code base and reverse engineer it into a model. Maybe that would be possible too. But yeah, anyway, you had another comment also.
Oh yeah, and I didn't mean you should stop your explorations, right? Just that you can really clearly say what this thing does well already. But the other comment was more about what is interesting to me right now. So most of the examples that a person sees about use of LLMs is more text-oriented. So it's really, I've enjoyed seeing an example where the primary outputs are, not text, where we see it producing these structured information, and these diagrams are created from that. I think that's there's going to be a lot more of that, I think, coming in. So I really found that part interesting.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That we see a lot of tools, you're going from a text prompt all the way to some kind of finished product. And you don't have any step in between where you actually can see what you are doing. And I think that is probably not always the best way.
And did you actually show us any of that part? I may have missed.
Sorry, show the which part?
Where it actually generated the whatever it is that underlies these diagrams, and what its return values.
You mean what the LLM is returning to us?
Yeah, you did show us a YAML document, but
yes,
is that what the LLM is generating, or
it's generating a quite simple JSON. So we have one JSON format that for the domain events, and one other for the cards, and then we have one for the data models. So, but it's all, I mean, pretty straightforward JSON, and so we're doing it multiple prompts. So maybe some of you have experienced that you get better result if you give it small and focused tasks. So first we only ask for the workflow, and then once we have the workflow, we pass it back in, and then we ask for the cards. And then if you want the data models, then we pass back in all the information to generate the data models. So that's, in the beginning, we tried to generate everything in one go, but that was too slow and didn't give so good results. But instead of showing the customer content, I will generate it. So it was process for last mile delivery for an electronics retailer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one example when a previous colleague contacted me and said, hey, I'm going to go to this electronics retailer and do a workshop about last mile delivery. and although this is a very experienced consultant, he said, I don't know anything about last mile delivery, so can you help me? And what he did was to generate a couple of example workflows and go in and look at the details. And I think now we got a very small example. So it can be much richer than this, especially I think we'll be using version 3.5 now, if we use version 4. But after just clicking around in this tool, 10 minutes, he basically said that, yeah, I mean, I know how to facilitate, I know how to deal with the workshop, and I just needed exactly this. I just needed to see how is a typical workflow for last mile delivery. So he said, now I can go in, like without this, I would not feel confident, but now I can go in confident to the workshop. I know what I'm talking about. So we have consultants using it for this, preparing for workshops. And this workshop turned out to be really, really good. It's like 10 people in a big screen, 3 hours, and they mapped out everything.
So if I can react on that, because if I consult and facilitate, I rather not know anything about the domain to keep myself curious and not fall into it's just like that bias, right?
Yeah.
So I'd rather have no information at all and let them tell me the information, because that way, well, it doesn't it lowers my biases, even though we all have biases. And I think that's already a huge problem in AI, right?
Yeah.
The bias that it can give us. So I'm curious what you meant with it was an effective.
Yeah, I think it was effective because, I mean, if the consultant understands when not to talk, but the consultant still knows the domain. So, if you don't know the domain and you facilitate a workshop, I mean, at least for me, it's hard because they say things and I don't know how it's spelled even, maybe, and I'm trying to figure out what it could mean. But if I know the terminology, if I know how it usually looks, it can be helpful. But yeah, I mean, I see your point. So yeah,
Well,
it's both good and bad.
Context dependent, right?
Because, yes.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if I don't understand, I'll just ask questions, and that questions can trigger new discoveries itself. It's not a bad thing to just don't know the domain yet. I'll just ask questions.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I agree. Maybe this could be also helpful for more junior consultants to teach them, so they can learn much quicker. They can step up, and they can do more difficult workshops, even though they don't have so much experience. But yeah, I mean, you have a good point. So yeah,
I did run into a company besides that teached their own LLM. Sorry, my Dutch got in the way a bit. And what they did, it included all the stuff inside their company, right? All the knowledge that's there. And even then I had some questions, but then it would already be useful, right? Then it could already show me some contextual things that are in their own Wikipedia's Jira project, blah, blah. This costs a lot. This was a huge company with a lot of cash that could generate their own large language model.
right.
And then it will become a bit better, right? Because then I can ask it questions and it will give me sort of like, well, what's the right answer then as well, right? Because we all know things die on Confluence or Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Still a question how up to date that discovery is. Then I already have some better thoughts on the domain.
Yes.
I'm not biased myself.
Right. Yeah. But I think this with using your own data to train models, that is like the general direction things are going in, it seems like. So that would also be happening in this case.
Yeah. Gregors?
Yeah, I wanted just to follow up on this idea about these biases and why that could be a wrong thing. And I mean, to me, I think it is kind of the opposite. I mean, in the whole industry, we tries to look for patterns for those common problems. We had the Fowler's book about analysis patterns. We have archetypes. I mean, we have invented a lot of things in the whole industry, trying to find those common patterns in order to find things that may be common between different domains. So I guess that to some extent, as experienced architects, you are also doing a sort of the same thing, that you are using your own knowledge as a transfer knowledge to then get into that new domain. And as Staffan said, I mean, I can also relate to the fact that before going into the EventStorming session, I also usually did several experiments on my own, just to get some sort of ideas. Of course, the downside of it was that there was a bias, but again, I don't think that this is necessarily a bad thing. And also, maybe even if this model that is auto-generated is wrong, then if you have a domain expert in the room, it's some people say that it's usually the easiest way to get the correct answer is to give the wrong answer and then have someone to immediately react to your wrong answer to something. And then I think that this could be a very helpful tool to visualize those wrong answers and get the discussion in the areas where it actually matters.
Yeah, exactly. And so maybe you can say that experience itself creates some bias, but you still there's still a demand for experience.
What is being generated here?
I just gave you another try at the last mile delivery.
Okay.
So just to know all these things: dispatch officer, courier, hub manager, quality control, packaging staff, inventory staff. Maybe this is overkill, and we have some customer service involved. Just knowing all this terminology would actually at least make me feel more safe going into a workshop about last mile.
Yeah, and as far as I recognize, I mean, it also, I mean, not now, but when I was experimenting with that, it also gives some examples for the potential risks in each step, and opportunities and these kind of things.
Yes. Yeah. So for example, let's say here we have pick from shelf. Sometimes products are misplaced. Implement product location tracking is an opportunity or ideas. So we can generate quite sometimes quite general things, but it can also come up with some pretty cool ideas and warnings.
This could be very good help in example mapping, for instance.
Yeah.
Right? So looking at the different what ifs and scenarios here, or even just to generate some ideas from here.
Yeah. And also, as you see, you can configure these car types. So it's quite good. I had a workshop when we configured one car type as KPI. So look at this whole workflow, because companies want to become more data-driven. Look at this whole workflow. Yeah, and by the way, when they do that, they usually go from 0 to 10 or 20 KPIs and start doing too much at once. But just looking at this whole workflow and ask the question, if you only can measure one KPI here, which KPI would that be? Or 2 or 3? And then they can look at this and have the discussion, and maybe they say that, yes, this is the main thing that we need to improve. This is where we're going to put the KPI. Okay, what is this KPI? Yeah, that's also a very good discussion to have in my experience.
Mm-hmm. Any more questions, comments, or from you, Staffan?
Well, as I said before, I would love to have people trying out this, giving feedback, and I think that everyone can sign up and get one project for free. And we also said that from this session, if you sign up and you give us just a little bit of feedback, we will also offer you to have 2 projects for free. So you can have one project where you just play around and the LLM is included. and one project where you can like work with a real case, for example.
That's cool. Thanks for it. All right. Also, having mentioned feedback, I also wanted to ask the audience if you would be so kind and fill out some feedback, your thoughts about today's meetup. That would be great. I'm just pasting the link in the chat, and if you have a few minutes after the meetup, please just give us feedback. I'm also adding that on the YouTube. I hope. I try to at least. Okay, so I thank you very much for the demo, for the meetup. Thanks for everyone for joining. And yeah, continue from here. I mean, just give us feedback or ping Staffan directly for the second product, second free product, or how did you say, Staffan?
Yeah.
Or yeah, just
second project. Yes, second project. Yes.
Project. Sorry. Yeah. So have a great evening or day or afternoon, everyone. And thanks for joining. Thanks for being here. And meet you soon, probably on the next meetup. Oh, and also if you want to look at the recording afterwards, you know, I mean, later on it will be uploaded to virtualddd.com. So you can check it out. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for attending.
Bye bye. Thanks for the demo.
Thank you.
Have a great
for the
day.
arrangements.
Very much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.